everybody. I'm Ben Morganti, and this is Screen Preach, episode 72. And I know some of you who watch consistently are probably thinking, whoa, holy shit, is it true? Is he doing another one already? I know, right? It seems like lately in the past, I've been taking a break in between a lot of them, and longer breaks, and that's just the way it is because of the way things are, and I've always said this. But I appreciate anyone who comes back, and thank you for listening and watching. We're going to talk about one movie on this episode. One movie. I was going to do the whole thing, I was going to do like the posters, but you know what? I'm sure I'm going to have a Batman special at some point during the existence of this thing, and we'll save all the bells and whistles for then. But I had to do an episode. I had to do one this early. I had to come right back in and I had to talk about this. This is the latest, biggest release, and I just, being a huge Batman fan, being a huge fan of the Dark Knight trilogy when it was out, with all three of those films being in my top whatever, the Dark Knight being in my top 10 easily, maybe, probably top 5, definitely top 5. What the character of Batman has meant to me growing up, even like I grew up with the shitty ones, like I grew up with the Schumacher Batmans, and then I saw the Keaton ones, and they were a million times better, and then yeah, the Dark Knight trilogy just changed everything for me, as did reading the comics for the first time. This character has meant so much to me growing up, forever. How could I not talk about the 2022 release, Matt Reeves, The Batman, episode 72 of Screen Preach? Let's do it. I had to come back and do just an episode just on this, and talk about it in the name of the Godfather, the Son of Odin, and the Holy Jedi. I'm so pumped. I'm so excited. I might, it's all my thoughts about this film. They've been bubbling up all week ever since I saw it. They just keep kicking around in my head all week. So I might I'm probably going to be all over the place with my take on it, but it's got to happen, I just had to talk about the Batman. And, after this week, probably won't be an episode for a while. Because I'm waiting for shows to come out and then end too, the seasons, and then movie-wise, not a whole lot. We got Morbius, we got Fantastic Beasts, so maybe we'll see what I decide. It always just depends on the moment. But there will be no, after this one, be a little break again. I'm not sure how I'm going to do. I'm not 100% on my awards episode yet. I was going to, remember I mentioned I was going to do like Licorice Pizza, and like I'll that might just happen. All that might just happen later on, but it doesn't matter. This was a must. This was a must. And I'm so excited to talk about it. Yeah, I noticed from last week too. Doesn't it look like Sharon Stone's looking at me the whole time? She's just eyeing me down the whole episode. I can't get her to. She just won't leave me alone. It's just constant staring at me, Sharon. And let's face it, Sharon Stone. Your mother was no Sharon Stone. How's everybody doing? Nothing's changed for me on my end, really. Other than the fact that I genuinely feel exhausted most of the I'm just, we gotta get right into this. We gotta get right into this, because it's gonna consume the whole episode. Let's do it. We got all of our thing, right? Everything Screen Preach has to offer, new segments, new, all of it. Let's jump in and start with what was the latest in the news these past 2 weeks. And there was a good amount. It's good to be still kind of current with everything. Coming off of Batman talk, I saw something today interesting. Just not something you would think would be a story, but we'll talk about the Batman in its entirety and how the score was just, I mean, just marvelous. But like, the composer of the film, Michael Giacchino, is making his directorial. I assume his directorial. I mean, he's directing a Marvel project now. All of a sudden, Michael Giacchino, the composer of the Batman and many other films, including the Apes films, and just his filmography, his resume is impressive to say the least. And now he's going to direct the Werewolf by Night Halloween special for Marvel and on Disney Plus. Let's just start there and kick it right off. I mean, that's wild, huh? I mean, he composed one of the best scores of the year, probably one of the best scores of the last decade, and now he's directing a Marvel project. That is not what I expected in the news at all. So cool to see. I'm looking forward to that. Always looking forward. But yeah, it continues to just be all kinds of wild updates. For instance, the big thing that I saw first and foremost was the fact that the Outlander series, which just returned for its 6th season, I still need to watch the series. I know my girlfriend loves it. I will catch up on that, but it's going to have a prequel series in development. And I don't know shit. So I can't expand on that because I don't watch it. But that's cool. This Is Us star Lyric Ross joins Marvel's Ironheart series on Disney Plus. Cool. Love new casting. Love it. Chris Hemsworth will play the lead villain in Furiosa. The Furiosa, Mad Max Furiosa, the prequel to Fury Road, about the character of Furiosa. And then big thing was that Marvel feels even more complete on Disney Plus because they are finally making the big move that they should have made, or that they just needed to make. They need to make, and that's taking a step in the right direction here and bringing parental control options to Disney Plus, because they will have more mature content on there. They just have to, with everything that's coming, and just things that are just need to be placed in a more mature story world. Moon Knight probably being one of them. They have to do this, and they reacquired back their characters here too from Netflix. All of the Netflix shows are now officially coming to Disney Plus on March 16th. That is where you can find them, and it's fucking awesome. Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Iron Fist, Luke Cage, The Punisher, The Defenders, all on Disney Plus with everything else. Now Spider-Man still needs to get on there somehow. He just does. But other than that, I mean, it's going to be the place for all things Marvel. It already is. I mean, I'm revisiting the animated shows from back in the day. It's fun to revisit those. The Spider-Man, the 90s Spider-Man series is so fucking good. But yeah, here we go, and I'm in the middle of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. As I've mentioned, you people who follow know this. I needed to know where the fuck it was going to be. I was just hoping immediately, and it was immediate. I didn't know it was going to be this fast, you know? Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. as well, on Disney Plus. I'm on season 5 of that, catching up, and I know it's done, so I can binge it all the way through. Actually just started The Boys Diabolical, the animated. That's ridiculous. Yeah, there's always some good shit there. So yeah, Disney has to add parental controls. I know that they got some backlash from like the PC something, I don't know, parental, I don't fucking know, like, and they said like this destroys your brand. Fuck out of here, man. Like, come on. Like, what are we gonna do? We're gonna put Deadpool in a fucking PG movie? Like, it's just the way of things. They're not doing it specifically to. It's funny. They want to point at them doing it specifically for revenue purposes, to gain more revenue from this. It maybe that. I mean, sure. I'm sure it's part of it, but it's just part of the changes coming to to Marvel comic adaptations too. Like, you can't make a Blade movie that's just not, in a darker tone. You can't make a fucking even Moon Knight or what was it? A Punisher is these characters. Daredevil. Now that they have a what am I doing? I'm very animated with my hands tonight. Holy shit. Yeah, even Daredevil. They just belong in a more grounded, more gritty storyline than the Marvel sugarcoat that we get. It's just part of it. It's just what needed to happen, Yellowstone star Kevin Costner to host a 4-part documentary series on 4-part Fox Nation series celebrating Yellowstone National Park, because he's also that makes sense. It's pretty cool. Michael Douglas to play Benjamin Franklin. In an upcoming film, Jack Harlow is going to make his acting debut and play the role that Woody Harrelson did in the White Men Can't Jump reboot. Apparently got the role off of one audition. They were like, yeah, this is the guy for the part. Like, I guess he's got some acting chops. We're going to find out. And just how do you feel about that kind of classic being remade? It's just like, is it even necessary? Sometimes these studios, they just make things nobody asked for. But I don't know. Sometimes, though, you get, like, a good movie out of it. So we'll see what happens. Sure, it's just, I don't know. Finally, the Will Smith sequel that I have wanted for a while, I think. Just, I don't know if I ever really wanted it. Maybe as a kid, because when I saw the film, but they're doing an I Am Legend sequel, which also means the alternate ending of the first movie is canon and not the theatrical cut. It's the only way this works, because Will Smith is returning, unless it's all flashback shit. Will Smith is returning. I mean, you could do a prequel, but I don't think that's what they're going for at all here. Will Smith is returning for an I Am Legend 2, and Michael B. Jordan will be in the film as well. I think he's producing it, too. They'll produce it together. That's very interesting news. I'm on board for that. I just hope it's done right, because the first one is a classic. Sony's Kraven the Hunter casts Alessandro Nivola, the Many Saints of Newark star, will now be joining the Marvel Sony Spider-Verse. We also have Jeffrey Dean Morgan and Lauren Cohn getting their own spin-off Walking Dead series. I don't know what the fuck is going on there, because I'm not part. I don't know. I know Daryl's getting his own there's a whole. But I'm not caught up on that either, so I can't really attest to that. God of War TV series being shopped to Amazon, if you know the video game. Matt Reeves has given an update on what's going on with the Gotham PD series, because after Terrence Winter was let go from the project, they had to kind of do a whole re-evaluation of it, and now it's apparently turning more into a kind of Arkham Asylum-based series on HBO Max, so that'll be interesting. Borderline horror, borderline haunted house kind of vibes. That should be interesting. The whole Matt Reeves Batman world, which we'll get into, is one that I do not mind at all spending more time in. That's why we officially have the Penguin TV series on HBO Max with Colin Farrell returning to the role, and that is official, and it's been ordered to series too. So it's getting a full-on first season ready to go. Dune Part 2 is now making moves. They cast Florence Pugh, up-and-coming fucking legendary up-and-coming superstar. Florence Pugh will join Dune Part 2. What I also saw recently, and I wonder if Dune should be our main topic here, because it was very interesting to see this. But the Dune writers, one of them is the director himself, Denis Villeneuve. Him and the other writer there, who wrote the script, they have been eyeing a kind of whole kind of. They're thinking third Dune. They're thinking a part 3, and they're also thinking that the world itself can expand beyond. They're looking for other storylines to potentially do in this world, and it makes sense. The books, there's many of them, right? So you could just keep making the movies, or you could kind of take it and run in different directions. Maybe a TV show, maybe this, maybe that. But they're definitely thinking a third film after this part 2, and that probably was the biggest news that I saw this week. I think it's very much a must-do. It's kind of an IP that you can't really just let. I think if done properly, it could be huge. Like, I loved the first one. I am psyched for the second one. Florence Pugh joining is great casting. And they said who she'll be playing. I have not read the books yet, but it's funny about these things. Like, this is a classic book series, classic, and I still I plan to get to it. But it's one of those things where the cinema showed me first. So there's just a lot that happens to me a lot. It's not, and I'll go and I'll read something after the fact, and I'll go, you know what, the book was better, or you know what, it's not that they're better, they're just different. I'm really usually that guy who says that. But she's playing Princess Arulan. I don't know the character, but fans of the books will. And that's so fucking cool, all of that. Yeah, the writers, director, they're investigating other cinematic prospects for the Dune franchise. Let's go. I will continue to update as we learn more about that, obviously. Follow at Screen Breach on Instagram. The other biggest things are pretty straightforward. I mean, we had Drake and Josh star Josh Peck joining Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer because, let's see, every week there's a new person joining that cast. I mean, it's unbelievable. How many people are in this movie at this point? It's unreal. But the biggest things, obviously, we finally got it, right? We got the Obi-Wan Kenobi teaser trailer. It's the only trailer I need to see. Too, I'm not a trailer guy because it ruins too much. Teasers are good. This was perfect. Didn't give away too much. Did tell me one thing that I needed to know that's very important. The bridging of live action and animation is happening very much again here, as it needs to going forward all the time, because the animated storylines really made the prequels have a whole different kind of name. Like, it gave the prequels their name more than the movies did, right? It's just fantastic, right, all around. And there are characters from Star Wars Rebels that are clearly in this series. And it makes perfect sense for what the storyline seems to be. Obi-Wan's being hunted. It looks just fantastic. Hayden Christensen back in the role of Anakin Skywalker, probably for flashbacks, but definitely Darth Vader for the main timeline of this series, as there was after the trailer, there was an image released, or put, sneak peek image via Entertainment Weekly. So yeah, I mean, we're here, man. Finally, it's going to be here any second. It'll be here before you know it, May 25th. Obviously, the other big thing, Peaky Blinders officially coming to the U.S. on June 10th on Netflix. Can't wait for that. I hear good things about it, as it's already airing right on the other side of the pond. Yeah, I also, obviously, I know what's going on in the world right now. I'm not ignorant to it. I want to be sensitive to it, but I like to keep it. I'm gonna keep it all in high spirits. It's fucked up what's going on. It's just fucked up. But it's also one of those things, just like all the time. I'm one of those people who always likes to, if I don't know a lot about something, don't talk about it like I do, because that would be irresponsible. I I know I've been reading everything, but it's like I don't want to like. It's just it's word. There's a whole. It's fucked up on all sides. This whole thing. It's just fucked up on all sides, and we have a serious problem clearly with this fucking guy on the fucking over there. Like this fucking Putin guy is just. I mean, it's unfucking believable, isn't it? This whole thing is. I guess I could do another segment too. What could it hurt? Because there was, I mean, the other really big thing, which is the fact that Deadpool 3 has movement. Deadpool 3 has movement, and it's big movement, because Deadpool 3 has officially found its director, and it's an interesting choice. Not one that I would have thought they'd even go with. Obviously, Sean Levy, the director now of Deadpool 3. Him and Ryan Reynolds have chemistry. They've worked on projects before, but it's just not the. He's done things I liked. I actually really love Real Steel with Hugh Jackman that he did. I love. He's a producer on Stranger Things. He produced, quite a few things, and he directed quite a few things. It's just he's very, very kind of in terms of genre and whatnot. He's not strictly one, so it's interesting. It's an interesting choice all around. But I think that's great that there's movement and it's official and it's at Marvel Studios. And this is what I mean. It's important that Disney allow for these kind of stories to be told under their brand. It's just the only way to. You want to expand. You want to purchase. Fox and every other company and every other studio, and then you have to also be willing to make the movies they would have made themselves. Because you have all these properties, you have all this IP, and you have a responsibility to that IP to tell it properly, to tell those stories properly. And Deadpool 3 is a perfect example of, we'll see, as far as I'm concerned, it's going to test everything, because it'll tell us if they can handle this kind of change. So Deadpool 3 taps Sean Levy as its director. Other than that, that's it. That is the news. We had Warner Bros. Delay some of its films. Its slate's been kind of moved around again. But other than that, that's the news, and we can move on to our topic. Our much needed moving on to our topic. I'm going to be a little bit all over the place, but I can't really, it's just time to talk about the Batman. A all-around masterful work of cinema, right? To take a character, right, that has been just done time and time again, you just hope. You just hope and you hope and you pray and you pray. Now, I'm the kind of person who always said, first of all, why shouldn't we have more Batman? Like, people would be like, the bar's too high. I don't know more Batman. Like, but I need you. There's nothing wrong with seeing what somebody else would do with the character. And here's a perfect example of somebody taking the character in a direction that maybe at the time you didn't even know you needed. Grounding him in a world and in an environment that, takes all the themes of Batman and really just plays with it in ways you didn't know you needed. I also am the kind of person who goes into movies without any expectations. I don't want expectations, because then I could be let down because of the expectations I put on it. But when it comes to a character that's so sacred to me and to everything that I love about art and cinema, and it's too important that I have to put there's natural expectations going into something like this. And when a filmmaker actually exceeds those expectations, when you think they couldn't, when you think, not that they couldn't, but there's no way they could come close to what the bar is, that it's one of the most satisfying things to walk out of a theater and feel that. And so that's where I'm at when I talk about the Batman. And so I'm going to talk about it in detail, about all the little things that I thought were great about it. And let's just fucking go. I mean, also, how do you talk about this movie without talking about The Dark Knight or the Dark Knight trilogy? It's going to happen here because Nolan did what we all needed for the character. He took the character in the absolute perfect direction, grounding the character in a world that's like our own, very relevant, very gritty, very noir. He's all these elements that Nolan played with. They really allowed for this movie to be made and for this movie to exist. You know, in a way. And there's certain highlights in the movie, obviously. It's a film that, at the end of the day, no matter what, the debates are going to be in this episode. It's part of this. Who's the best Batman? What's the best Batman movie? We can have this discussion. And I just want to point out before we get into that, I have to see it more times, obviously. But I know I love the movie. Okay? And it needs to age. And how it ages is important too. Because the Dark Knight trilogy holds up, will hold up for all time. Especially The Dark Knight, which is a masterpiece that is in the top fucking 5 movies of all time ever made. I mean, at least on IMDb it is, which is wild. And it's just worth mentioning those things. That it could... Maybe it ages bad. Maybe the Batman ages badly. Maybe it doesn't. It doesn't matter right now. For the sake of this conversation, I know where it stands for me. I also know that where the story goes, too. Where Reeves' trilogy, because I'm sure it'll be a trilogy, where that... I mean, and it seems to be like they might actually have a chance to do something that I said they should have done years ago. Around the time Marvel was doing the Marvel Cinematic Universe and building that up, DC was trying to do theirs, and they failed miserably. What they should have been doing was trying to build a Batman-only, Batman-centric, Gotham-centric cinematic universe. I would have loved to have seen that, where movies keep coming out in that world, and Batman is at the center of it, or maybe he's not in every movie, or maybe he's just... That was really where DC and Warner's should have went. You know? It was very possible, and there's a possibility for it to happen here and now with this. With what Reeves is creating, the world he's created for the character, and the shows prove that. We have TV shows on HBO Max coming that prove it'll be a more expanded world than just films, but at the very least, he will still have this vision of a trilogy. I can see that much. And people are talking about, okay, who's the next villain going to be, all this stuff, and should it be Joker again, should it not be Joker, because spoilers... I mean, for the most part, my take on this film is mostly spoiler-free. I assume... There's spoilers, though. There's always spoilers. But there was a nod to the Joker in the film at the end. Of course, Matt Reeves talked about that moment. And not so much about it being like, oh, the Joker's next. Because, personally, don't do that. We just don't need to see the character. I don't think it's just... We don't need that. We don't need it again. We just don't need it again. We just don't need it again. You'd have to literally do it in a completely different way. You'd have to make the character of the Joker completely different. And then maybe, and even still, we probably would be like, I don't know, you know? Again, here's the guy who exceeded my expectations. So, whatever he decides to do, I'm going to buy a ticket and sit down in that theater and see what happens. See where he's taking us. But he has said, you know, there's that moment with the Joker in the film. It's really more about this idea of expanding on a line that Batman says, or that Catwoman says, or that this conversation they're having where she says, you know, Gotham's not going to get better because of this. After this, it's going to get worse. It's just going to get more and more chaos. Things are going to change, and not for the better. And and showing the Joker there is perfect for representing that idea, that these are the kinds of characters, these are the kinds of people that are going to be coming out of the chaos left behind in this first film. And the Joker being someone that is not quite the Joker yet, too. This idea that he was already kind of locked up by Batman before this film, before this film, takes place before that, and that he was not really the Joker yet, but like, someone who will become the Joker, and that just leads into this idea of everything being very new, and feeling that way throughout everything about it. But how this trilogy that he does plays out also affects this film per se. It will always stand on its own, of course, but how the overall story plays out is important for any chapter in the trilogy or universe or whatever they plan on doing. So that's another factor, and how that ages. So I just want to point those things out before people start coming at me like... And I don't think there's any people agree. People mostly will agree with me on where this film stands. But I just wanted to point it out before I get into this. I can literally walk you through all the things that I love, And just right off the bat, it's no question this is easily the best Batman iteration we've had since Nolan's trilogy, right? We're not going to get into the Affleck thing because it doesn't even compare. And I don't want to hear it. We'll get into it. I know what people are going to say. I have a rebuttal for all of it if you want to get into it. But for now, as far as I'm concerned, walking out of this theater, this is the second greatest Batman movie I've ever seen after The Dark Knight. Right? It's just where it is for me, and it's different too. It's different than The Dark Knight. It's masterful, but in different ways, and for different reasons. The few similarities there are, as I said again, because the Dark Knight trilogy really did pave the way for this movie to be made. And in a weird way, too, it kind of feels like some kind of bold pseudo-sequel to the Dark Knight. Like, in a way, it's taking place adjacent to that trilogy. Like, it's almost kind of like they could exist. Like, it almost feels like a film Nolan could have made. You know what I mean? Like, that's which is great. But again, just gives into this idea that, in a way, this film maybe doesn't exist or exist in the same way, if not for what Nolan did. I do think that's possibly... I think that's true. I do. And because of the dark approach, we get the darkest with this. Now we have the grittiest and darkest version of a Batman movie we could get. And in a weird way, it feels like it could, if done properly, continue to exceed our expectations. I'm not going to go deep into like, oh, this could be like, just focus on the one we saw here. Right? The Batman, the character, that world, those themes, it's like everything in the Dark Knight trilogy they're elaborated on here in the 10th degree, but also the fact that it takes an approach to Batman, the character, that maybe people have been wanting to see, right? This idea about, like, world's greatest detective. And so Reeves went in that direction. It's different. I won't argue with anyone trying to tell me this is the best Batman movie ever made either. I won't argue it with you. You're not. It's close, but you can't. I know. I love how the big thing now is, the Dark Knight was only the Dark Knight because of Heath Ledger's performance. No, it wasn't. Yes, was that a huge factor? Yes, but it's not. That's a masterpiece, man. A masterpiece. The fact that it's also Nolan's masterpiece when he's made some of the most incredible films we've seen, films that are also in our top, whatever, 50, 20, 10, is really remarkable that the Batman movie he made, or one of them, is his masterpiece. And it is. But it's just the fact that going into this movie actually made me torn. The fact that it made me think about everything. It made me be like, was this my favorite Batman performance? Was this the best version of a Batman story? Like, the fact that it did that alone tells me that it succeeded in what it was supposed to do, right? But you should know that Robert Pattinson definitely exceeded my expectations. So the specific things that stood out to me are obviously the musical score, like I mentioned, right? I said it was one of the best film scores of possibly the last decade, definitely of the year, possibly of all time for all. And it even gives Hans Zimmer's Dark Knight score a run for its money, even though that is one of the top film scores of all time as well. Which one's better? That's a whole other debate as well. We're not here to talk about which one's better. We're here to talk about just the one we saw. I'll get into all the... I just can't... Like I said, I'll be all over the place with this. But also, you can't really talk about one without talking about the... It's all part of this. Isn't that amazing? That's just how impactful the Dark Knight trilogy was. That here we are with a totally other film, and we can't help. It's going to be part of the conversation. And that's good for the Reeves film, because it means you got there. You got to that level of Batman movies. If it were a piece of shit, we wouldn't even be having this conversation in terms of... We wouldn't even bring it into the conversation. So that is a success. But it's one of those scores that I immediately added into my library, and I play it when I'm at home just chilling, like in the background. It's like that kind of score. It captured me. It captured the very essence of this particular Batman story. It does so by capturing the state of Gotham and the characters we come to follow within it. Everything about the Batman feels like an origin story while not being an origin story for Batman. Which is incredible that it's done so selectively. It's done so selectively that way, and it works so well. But it manages, like I said, to feel like both. And at the same time as it not being a Batman's origin story, it also feels like... it manages to feel like both an unprecedented look into Batman's world at a time when he's fairly new to his crusade, but not that new. And like an origin for the city's descent into dread and possibly despair, if not for the Batman there to fight for it, this idea that it is an origin story for Gotham itself and the villains within it is very true. Everything feels like it's in its infancy. Everything about the characters and the world, which is, I'm pulling that term right from Matt Reeves. He said this, the Gotham, Batman, the villains, they're in there, everything's in their infancy. It's all new. Batman is in it's a year 2 story. I've known that for a long time. He's 2 years in, and the opening sequence. No, it's not the opening. It's the second sequence. The I Am Vengeance sequence, which is one of my favorite sequences in the film. That sequence, brilliantly done, really, really conveys this idea that I'm talking about in just a few frames and with voiceover. This voiceover approach, by the way, to Bruce Wayne. Unbelievably risky and yet pulled off so well, right? Because we've never seen it before, and... it's so the kind of character that you could use that device for, that element for, and it's never been done before, and it was so fucking good. I really loved that. I appreciated it. And to be inside Bruce Wayne's head, seeing more firsthand his obsession, how it consumes him, and how he sees Gotham, how he sees his crusade and seeing it from his. I mean, that was almost that was almost a must, right? It was important to do that in this one because we can see how different this Bruce Wayne is from other iterations. He's become this kind of like, well, first of all, he's become the kind of Batman this kind of Gotham needs, that's for sure. He's intense rage and barely any mercy in him, right? But that's also part of this amazing arc for this Batman that we get in this film, that Reeves decided to take this approach. Because how do you take the conventional approach to Bruce Wayne's arc in a Batman movie, in a first time Batman, in a first look at the character? How do you do the conventional, he's becoming Batman, when you start the film and he's already Batman? It's more about what he represents and then realizing what he actually represents. Like, so the arc, again, I'll be all over the place, but I'll expand on everything. But that opening, that sequence, the Iron Vengeance sequence, I loved how it could establish the timeline, right? We could really feel Batman he's a presence, but he's not too much of a presence. The thugs they might be aware of Batman, others aren't quite aware of Batman. Like that just in a few frames we get it. We're in here in this world where Batman exists, but he's new. Just like that, if we're in it. We buy it and we're in it. Top 3 sequences in the film. And the way that Reeves utilizes the fear theme, it's different from how Nolan did, and it's creative and it's brilliant. The use of the Bat's signal, right, and using it to convey this idea of fear and how it's struck into Gotham, into the criminals of Gotham. I mean, it was done so beautifully. I loved that choice. Like, we just get this moment of, like, he's not even there, but he's there. Like, his presence, like, just so well done. So well done. So the villains, also in their infancy, like I said, like Reeves said, they have always shaped Gotham, the villains. I mean, we have a whole series that's about them and how they, I mean, that's, they shape Gotham. In a way, I always loved how Nolan's films, they played with the idea of escalation, how they only exist because Batman exists, and it's like a push-pull, it's like a cause-effect thing all the time, which is true, too. But here it's more like, here it's more like Gotham was heading in this direction regardless and needed someone like this Batman to come in and fight for it the way that he does. And then from there, you could make the argument for escalation, where they will become more extravagant or more creative as Batman is more of a presence there. Sure. Here we get a very gothic and gritty Gotham. We see form right before our eyes. Hence the Riddler's entrance into this world, which is the actual opening scene of this movie. Here's a character that's brilliantly portrayed by Paul Dano. I mean, talk about great villains and great performances of villains. Here we have another one. And it's interesting because the Riddler in this, he's something of like a man-child in a way. You know what I mean? Like he's something of, he's still a kid in his head, like, and then we see him like become the essence of evil over time, and it's through like pity and these empathetic motives that in a way we can almost agree with, but his approach is absolutely psychotic. But this main motive of his, this idea of unmasking the truth, it parallels Batman, right? They're both kind of out for the same thing. They just go about it in different ways. That's perfect. You want that from the hero-villain dynamic anyway. And at times throughout the story, we find ourselves questioning the mental stability of even our hero. They really dive deep into the theme of moral ambiguity, which is always at the center of Batman, right? So I mean, in retrospect, Bruce Wayne is just as disturbed as the killer is. Just as disturbed as the killer that he is hunting. The score, as we circle back to that, captures all of these things. Like, it's amazing. Like, the Batman theme is like kind of like it's got these different tones. It's like there's a Bruce Wayne tone and then there's a Batman tone kind of working at play. Because Bruce Wayne is one thing and then Batman is like this obsessed, like, we get the dynamic of that, you know. And he's not even really ever Bruce. Like, that idea that's presented in the Dark Knight trilogy, where like, this is your mask, Bruce Wayne is your mask, who you really are as Batman. They take that to the extreme because he's not Bruce Wayne. Like, he has no interest in being Bruce Wayne. He's Batman, and it's incredible. Yeah, it's really something to see Pattinson really portray it too in a certain way and express it. And really, like, the contrast to Bruce Wayne and Batman, it was really, really well done here. But the score for the Riddler too, capturing that childlike state and merging it with like an equally adult madness. And then Catwoman's sound captures this, like, I guess, air of survival or desperation or something. I get that feel, kind of like, it's the most noir theme in the film. Which, speaking of which, this is definitely the most noir Batman film we've ever gotten. Everything from the way it's shot, to the music, to the characters, to the story, all of it. There was this element of voyeurism, too. Aside from voiceover for the first time, we have this more direct approach to, like, voyeurism, which is also a element of noir. So again, but I appreciated that element because it is an element of Batman. He is this character who investigates in that way and will like follow and watch targets or people, and we've never really seen it expanded on, and here they expand on it, and I really, really appreciated it. The thing about the film's opening, which I thought was the opening sequence, expresses this too very quickly, and I thought, so yeah, it was Riddler's intros in the opening, like, terrifying fucking intro, like, because he's so terrifying, the character. I was legitimately, like, terrified at times, but he's the one that we see voyeuristically watching his target in the beginning, and it, again, even that, it actually, like, again presents a little ambiguity about who exactly it is that's watching, because Batman is a voyeur as well to Catwoman and stuff like that, so it's another subtle little thing that connects Batman and Riddler in this, is that that voyeurism. Again, they're like two sides of a coin in this. It's so well done. This whole thing is so layered and weaved together a certain way. It's really, really remarkable. We see it later when we see it later when we watch Selena too. All of this is adding to the very first person and even psychoanalytical perspective that we get from Bruce Wayne, never done before. And it's just, so the story itself taking a much more direct approach to the idea of Batman as the world's greatest detective, like I said. So finally, and this is the best part of the movie. This is the best thing. It doesn't feel like a comic book movie at all at times. Sometimes it does have those elements, but it's like, here, I really just liked how it feels like Batman's just a super detective working with a cop. It's like two cops, and one of them is a super detective trying to solve this unsolvable serial killer case. And the way that Batman intelligently handles the riddles that are left behind, and then commands the inside, and then the way he commands the inside of a crime scene, all these things, it's taking the world's greatest detective to the forefront for once, in the best kind of ways. And at the end of the day, I just love the way that it's, a lot of the movie is just Jim Gordon and Batman feeling like a detective duo, literally going around together, which is not normal. Like, you'd see Batman, like, just hell, he needs Jim for this, and then he's gone, and he does this. They really, actually, literally are like detectives working together and solving a case. It's like nothing I've ever seen in a Batman movie, and I loved it. A truly grim and at times terrifying, like I said, because of Riddler. Definitely, because it's like this crime film, like what the Dark Knight trilogy really plays with, but then it's really just a noir mystery with all the thrills you'd still want from a Batman movie. I mean, the car chase with Penguin alone expresses that 100%. Yeah, that was enough to wet my whistle with Batman action for sure. But it's also worth mentioning it because I've mentioned this to I've thought about this. The approach to the fight scenes and how it mirrors the Dark Knight is interesting too, because like everybody has this idea that Batman is really Batman when he's like unstoppable in combat and all that stuff, right? But I always felt when you're taking a more realistic approach like this one does and like Dark Knight films did, he's not some unstoppable force of combat. He gets beat up a little bit. Like, it's not. So again, I was curious how they would take, what approach they would take with that. He's not like, he's very much like in the Dark Knight trilogy, like that Batman. Like, the fight scenes are like, I mean, that Batman could fight even better. But I always felt like the stunts and the fighting were never the highlight of the Dark Knight trilogy, and they're again not so much here. Yet the way that Reeves approaches them, it adds to the elements, to the tone of this world even better. So it actually is a benefit because it's as grounded as you can get and as realistic as you can get. So he's not he fights like anyone else who's pretty good at fighting, and then at times you get elements of him being something more, but it's not really expanded on, at least not yet. Like, we get one moment where Jim Gordon he has his moment with Batman where he turns around and Batman's gone, and it was like, like quick, and like seems like how is it possible? Like, we get only brief Batman kind of. It's almost like Batman it doesn't do the Batmaning stuff all the way in this one. I don't know. It's just something to think about. Maybe I haven't really thought about that in too much detail, but it's definitely worth thinking about. It just adds to the whole idea of this being very grounded. And at the end of the day, if The Dark Knight was a crime drama, or gangster drama kind of adventure film, this is less that and more a legitimate, like, crime noir mystery. It's a mystery thriller about a killer being tracked down. Like, they're different movies. And then the script is just so layered, right? This feels closer to something like Prisoners or Seven than it does to like a superhero movie. Whereas The Dark Knight did the same thing in a way. It felt more like like American Gangster or something like that. Like, than like but even that one though, it was more comic booky than this one, I think. And then the other highlight of this, besides the music, I think, obviously the performances, I think, overall make this. I don't know, dude. It's all of it. But I think the way it's shot was probably my two favorite things. Ended up being my three favorite things: performances, the music, and the way it's shot. The way it's shot, again, the cinematography was that was something that, like, when the trailer came out, I was like, this. I don't know why I'm so hyped for this movie. I have a feeling about this movie. I ended up being right. It was just because from the trailer, the way it looked, the way it was shot, I was like, holy shit, this looks like it could be fucking something. it's undeniably beautiful, the cinematography. And it looked like a noir, and cinematographer Greg Fraser, who's now become quite the quite the in-demand cinematographer. He did Dune, he's been at work, for sure. And he said, too, he meant to make it look and feel like an urban noir with pockets of light in each frame. You go and watch it. I see that. And this look gave Gotham a presence that's the most enthralling thing since The Dark Knight, which naturally played with similar ideas thematically. Like, the cinematography of The Dark Knight is fucking one of the best, fucking incredible, one of the best, too. So, again, it's like which one's better? I don't ever want to say. I think they're just different. I don't know. But if The Dark Knight feels and looks more like a crime drama, this feels more like a noir by the look of it. So that's the difference. I do have to mention, too, this is the first time someone used stagecraft technology and the volume, that The Mandalorian used. I said it. I've been saying it. Don't be surprised if you see this very innovative technology start to get used in movies, too. Mandalorian did it. They actually took advantage of it here, and they used the volume for certain things, especially the car chase scene with Penguin. Beautiful, isn't it? How that thing is just an amazing tool now in cinema. I had to mention, just an honorable mention there. And definitely expected in the MCU going forward. I think they're using it in Thor and whatnot, but I just did not expect it to finally be used here first of all places. This is the first place I'm seeing it. Maybe I don't know. Again, that car chase too, one of the top 3 sequences. Yeah, my mind's been racing all week long, so I'm going to spew all over the place, but I can't help it. It's just been kicking around in my head all fucking week. Even just specific shots and angles that Matt Reeves decided to use, the choices he made, the way he designed it. I can't get over even some of that. And this, it just comes down to, like, everything being compared. I can't even help it. If Heath Ledger's Joker was the best performance or something, like, best villain, then, Paul Dano's right there under it. It's also possible, though, that this particular movie has the better performances outside of Ledger, like as an overall cast. Colin Farrell was an amazing Penguin, unrecognizable, but also just the way that he played the character was funny and also just quite a presence. Really captured the essence of Penguin. Zoe Kravitz was really, really empathetic in the way she played Selena. She was, for some reason, when I came out of there, I wasn't like overly impressed with her performance as Selena, but the more I think about it, it's very, very good. It's just that the way that they went with Selena's character in this one, sometimes it felt like her motives were all over the place, sometimes a little bit, like, what is it, or maybe it was just that her motive of getting out of Gotham is predictable and repetitive in things we've seen before. Like, she's this person who's trying to leave Gotham and all. Like, I just, that feels familiar, too familiar. I don't know, but as soon as you get the dynamic between her and Batman, it's like pulled right from the energy of those comic books. I don't know. Was it not a solid sense of motivation? I don't know what it was. But the more time you spend with it throughout the film, the more you just love Zoe Kravitz's portrayal. Maybe it was her backstory too. Could have been the backstory, which was it took her and made her the daughter of Carmine Falcone, and not a thing. I don't. But that was necessary, I think, for the story being told in a way. Like, that worked for this Gotham. That would be a thing that. So yeah, again, funny how that works, huh? I'm coming around to the choice. as I'm talking about it. Yeah, this Gotham is, I don't know. It's like this one really takes corruption to the extreme. Like, corruption feels like a cancer. It's just like there's a villain around every corner, and the seeds of trauma, greed, destruction, they're planted in every, like, they're just every which way by every which character you meet. Basically giving birth to, and that corruption gave birth to everything. It gave birth to the Riddler and to the vengeance of Batman and Batman himself. Like, so this Gotham is terrifying. This Gotham is dreadful. And Jeffrey Wright as Jim Gordon also managed to literally steal moments in the film for me. Like, I love him as Jim Gordon. But aside from being thematically relevant, it's the way Robert Pattinson plays the character of Bruce Wayne Batman that has me unbelievably enthralled with this iteration. As I've said, the haunting past of Bruce Wayne has in many ways destroyed him. What's left is this husk of a man who's uninterested with life outside of his obsession. There's only Batman, and it's at times even more heartbreaking to watch as it takes the length of the film for his character to have the realization that concludes the story. So, like I said, the arc of Batman, and this is different from other arcs of Batman in other movies. He has a very, very effective one for this story and for this film. Believing one thing in the beginning and something else at the end. And again, that's not like because of a lack of awareness on Nolan's part. It's just that's the way those stories framed Bruce Wayne's arc. Maybe it's like this, it's almost like the Bale iteration. It took him 3 films maybe to have some kind of similar revelation, but really more it's just that, like, the arc is him becoming the symbol, becoming Batman. In this, he believes he's this symbol, and he becomes this symbol. Vengeance in the beginning, hope at the end. And it just really makes me curious to see where the arc continues to go after this. And Pattinson just plays him differently. The voice we hear, too, like, it carries more weight than any conventional Batman growl we've come to know. It's the voice of a man trying desperately to toe a very thin line between good and bad, right and wrong. And it comes across in a way I've never seen before. It's just like so... It's different. It's just different. I mean, I'm not even going to lie to you. Like, he probably even deserves an Oscar nomination. Like, I'm not even lying about that. And I'm saying that about the actor playing Batman, which usually I don't know. I mean, the only other one who could have was Christian Bale, and they obviously snubbed that whole thing. I could go all fucking dead. This could be a 2-hour fucking episode. I mean, I'm not even... Obviously, I'm just... You tell me. It's obvious, isn't it? I loved the movie. And my rating of it, at least for now, no joke, is a 9.6 out of 10. A 9.6 out of 10. Because it was amazing. Because it was masterful. Because I want to see it again really badly a bunch more times. And I know that I don't have time, so probably going to have to wait until it's on HBO Max, which is next month. But I need to see it in a fucking theater again. And I know maybe that seems high, but you have to understand The Dark Knight, that's got like a 10 out of 10. That's a 10 out of 10 movie for me. That's a 10 out of 10 movie. Like, that's a 10. So, you know what I mean? Like, and that tells you my ranking for all this. And that brings me to our segments of the episode. Keep it moving, keep it rolling, and it's all Batman themed all the way around. all the way around. Why wouldn't it be, right? This week's Behind the Camera is obviously, as well, Batman themed. The 2005 epic Batman Begins, which to this day is every bit cinema's greatest comic book origin story. It naturally had interesting facts behind the making of it. Here's something I never knew. Christopher Nolan actually cited Blade Runner as an inspiration for the film, and even made the crew attend a screening of it before production to get everyone in the right mindset. Nolan is, of course, a cinematic genius in his own respect. So it makes sense he'd also be something of a freak when it comes to certain things. Like how about the writing of the script, with David S. Goyer taking place mostly in his garage. And if any producer wanted to read it, they would have to personally make a trip to Nolan's personal Batcave. He never sent them a single page. Of course, deciding who Batman is going to be is a huge responsibility, and it can't always be like the experience of Matt Reeves and Robert Pattinson, in which the role was in many ways written with the actor in mind. Many stars were on the shortlist for Batman Begins. This included Henry Cavill, who of course would go on to become Superman, and it included Cillian Murphy, who was almost chosen, as he apparently had a standout audition. He would of course instead get cast as Jonathan Crane, Scarecrow. Christian Bale will forever be the right choice, and did you know that he actually had such a discomfort with wearing the Batsuit that it actually got him more into character? He said helped him change his mood to one that better fit the missions of the Dark Knight. Guess we know the source of where that famous Batman growl voice came from after all. Also, if you're like me and listen to the soundtracks, I always wondered what the titles of Batman Begins scores mean. They are actually the names of different kinds of bats. It all makes sense now. And I'll always throw the iconic Vespertilio or Epticicious on when the mood strikes. And finally, it's worth knowing what went into making the world of Nolan's Batman come to life. Like how the Batcave was a hand-built set, meant to bring as much authenticity as possible. This would be the first time no other kind of special effect was used for the Batcave in a Batman movie. And we have to talk about the Tumbler, because it was famous. It was a famous Batmobile. Based off of military designs and built from scratch, including a fiberglass body, a 5 to 7 liter V8 engine, a hot air balloon burner, and racing tires. It cost $150,000 to make, and by the end was a fully functioning vehicle. If there's one thing I know, it's that I'll definitely be watching Batman Begins and the entire Dark Knight trilogy in the near future for the 1,000th time. It's masterful.
What the hell are you? I'm Batman.
And the debates of this week, that's right, debates plural because they're obvious, and I have the two biggest of all time in cinema, right? What is the best Batman movie? And who is the best Batman now that we're here? I made it clear The Dark Knight is, and probably always will be, the greatest Batman movie ever made. It just is. But this film is number 2 on my list. It is. It's number 2 on my list behind The Dark Knight. And I know that in the future it's possible this film will be in the debate more and more. People will put it in their number 1 slot. Some people probably already are, but I can't ever explain to you just how amazing, to me, forever, The Dark Knight is. That film. That specific film. The trilogy as a whole, masterful, one of the best trilogies in all of cinema. But I'm putting this film at number 2 in front of the other films in that trilogy. That just tells you where it is for me. And Batman Begins is number 3. Dark Knight Rises is number 4. Batman Begins, to me, is the greatest origin in a comic book movie. It just, that's that. And then I really was debating number 4 for a while, because I'm like, is Batman 1989 next after Batman Begins and then The Dark Knight Rises? And then I just, because of what it did and how it actually paved the way for everything else we've had after. And just the fact that Michael Keaton's a great Batman, and just every element to it. But I can't put anything above the trilogy of The Dark Knight as a whole, other than maybe this Reeves world that we're getting. And so, yeah, Batman 1989, that's number 5. Batman Returns is a great sequel to it at number 6. And then from there, you can tell where my rankings are. I fucking put Adam West's Batman above the crappy Schumacher disasters. Batman Forever's a little bit better than Batman and Robin, which is the worst Batman movie ever made, and probably one of the worst movies in general ever made. Batman and Robin was horrendous. But the real question is, who's the best Batman? And that is something I've been wrestling with all week as well. I'm serious. And at the end of the day, I kept saying I want to put Robert Pattinson first now. I just think and I know, but Christian Bale is I just want to, and then I was like, you know what? It's both of them. Right now, it's both of them, because for me, Robert Pattinson's the best Batman, and Christian Bale's the best Bruce Wayne. And that's how I feel. With Michael Keaton very much right there behind them. Love Michael Keaton's Batman. He is right there behind them. And then I'll give you Ben Affleck. He's there. He's behind Michael Keaton, even though he's just not. When I tell you this, it's more like we have Pattinson, Bale, and Keaton. They're up here. Pattinson and Bale are up there, and then Keaton's kind of right there. And then you have to kind of come way down here to even see Ben Affleck. And then you gotta go all the way. Then you gotta go a little bit further down for Adam West. And then you gotta go all the way down for Val Kilmer and George Clooney. Which always disappoints me to even say it that way, because I love Val Kilmer as an actor, and I love his other roles. But I don't love his Batman at all, and I don't love George Clooney's Batman at all. They are just not good at all. But people love Ben Affleck's Batman so much, they're like, he's my favorite. And it's the reason he's not good is because he doesn't play the character. People want to always argue, they're like, people who love Christian Bale and now Robert Pattinson, they don't understand how accurate Ben Affleck. Don't talk to me about accuracy, okay? Because it's not about that. I have 2 arguments for you. 1, accuracy is fine when it's portrayed better than how Ben Affleck actually portrayed him. I don't like him as Bruce Wayne. I don't like him as Batman. It was corny in every sense, the way he portrayed the character. That's number 1. He's barely bearable, just that much. He's a tad better in Justice League, and not Justice League, Zack Snyder's Justice League. And even still, it's alright, whatever. He's there, cool. We get some cool Batman stuff. He's definitely got, in terms of combat, I'll give him this. He's the one who feels like a Batman who's an unstoppable force more than the other guys. And that's because in that world that he's in, he needs to exist that way. And that feels very comic accurate and whatnot. And that's very cool. And I love the fight sequences for Ben Affleck's Batman. But that's literally it. Yeah, bulk and suit and all the other cool stuff, but just not. No. Another argument I want to make is I don't want a comic accurate Batman. I've learned over time. Comic accurate works great for me when it's in Marvel, or when it's characters like Superman. But for Batman is a character that needs to be as grounded and as gritty as he's been for the past now almost 2 decades with the portrayals done by Christian Bale and Robert Pattinson. That is what Batman really is. That's who Batman really is to me. Not this comic accurate shit that you think you get from Ben Affleck. It's just... The other obvious thing is Batman doesn't kill. Sorry. At the end of the day, you destroy the entire idea of who Batman is when Batman kills people, because that's what separates him from the villains. And the second I see Ben Affleck's Batman killing people, I want to rip my fucking hair out. So, there you have it. There you have it. I mean, I'm watching this shit the other day, and he's like, "Do you bleed?" Superman flies away. You will. It's just so fucking bad. It's just so bad. Zack Snyder's Justice League's a very, very, very well done film. It's really, really good. Okay, that is not because of Ben Affleck's Batman, and it definitely is way above the other ones. The thing is, I mean, Batman vs Superman is only barely above the shitty Schumacher movies for me. I'm not even kidding. Like, it's that. It's the more I've rewatched it, I actually fairly enjoyed it. It gets worse for me as I watch. I can't. There's that warehouse sequence. It's great. It's a great fight sequence. It's like probably my favorite scene in the whole movie, and that's it. I think the rest of and it's not entirely even that great because he's killing people, but like, it's cool and it's well done, and it's a kind of Batman I do like seeing. It is a kind of Batman I like seeing. Not the killing, but the idea of him being this unstoppable force of combat. Yeah. Yeah. Like, it's after Batman Returns at number 6, it's Snyder's Justice League, if we're including that. Otherwise, it's Batman vs Superman. And then Batman Forever, Batman 1966. Or, you know what? No, Batman 1966 is ahead of... Yeah, that probably... It's tough. It's a tough one to do that. I don't know. Probably, yeah. Probably above Batman vs Superman, even, because of the classic nostalgia of it all. I don't know. Justice League, the Whedon cut is worse than fucking Batman Forever, as far as I'm concerned. Because Batman Forever at least has some promise at times. Like, no joke, it does. Like, that one's actually better by a lot than, I don't know, I mean, Batman and Robin, we know. Batman is just the worst one. Anyway, that's it. I was gonna do the next episode of the draft, but I think we'll get back to it in the next episode of Screen Preach, episode 73, coming soon, and I will let you know when. But in the meantime, shout out to my patrons, my family: Jessica Murphy, Michael Morganti, Linda Morganti, Jack Morganti, Dylan Morganti, Tishan Construction. These are the people who support me always, and I appreciate them. Yeah, I think that's it. I almost did 2 behind the cameras. I was going to do Planet of the Apes as well, because Matt Reeves. But we'll get to that at some point, I'm sure. Follow me at Benji Morganti. Follow the show at Screen Preach. Check out my website, benmorgantistory.com. And remember, for these episodes and other content, you gotta go to bmsstudios.com and you gotta subscribe. And if you want to become a patron, when there's merch drops and I'm gonna do early release, that's for you people. For you people. And that's and you can be one. You gotta go to patreon.com/preacher to become one. But how do you like that for an episode? My take on the Batman. Go see it. I need to see it again. I need to see it again. And then I need to see it again. And yeah. as always, anyone who listens or watches, I appreciate it always. I really do. Thank you for that. Thank you very much for that. And yeah, have a cinematic week, everybody.